And if you guys aren't familiar, there were legislation just passed a few years ago to allow this. We're talking about two teams playing each other for their actual spring game as opposed to it being an inter-squad scrimmage. This is the actual piece of legislation here. It says, quote, permits a football team to scrimmage against a four-year college during its spring practice period as one of its 3 permissible 11-on-11 scrimmages outside the playing season. The scrimmage has to occur on or after the 10th day of the spring practice period, allowing time for student athletes to become acclimated to full contact. So, really cool piece of legislation. Now, the news recently has been based around Colorado and Syracuse with Deion Sanders, Fran Brown, respectively, trying to make this happen with their spring game at the D1 level. This is how this conversation got started.
Spring game will be televised. ESPN2 will broadcast spring game on the 19th. We got to sell this thing out and pack this thing because the way the trend is going, you never know if this is going to be the last spring game. I don't believe in that. I don't really want to condone that. I would like to play the spring. Actually, I'd like to play against another team in the spring. That's what I'm trying to do right now, to have it competitive. Playing against your own guys kind of get monotonous, and you really can't tell the level of your guys because, you know, it's the same old, same old. Everybody kind of know each other towards the end. I would like to style it like the pros. I would like to practice against someone for a few days, then you have the spring game. And I think the public will be satisfied with that tremendously. I think it's a tremendous idea. Yeah, I've told those personnel who should understand that it's a tremendous idea. Spring game.
So that's the original remark here. The video on Twitter, courtesy of CFB on Fox there. Thank you for that video post. And you see in the post there, Fran Brown had at Deion Sanders on X/Twitter. He says, we'll come to Boulder for 3 days. So Syracuse proposing they would come to Boulder, Colorado for 3 days, do a joint practice type deal with the Buffaloes over there. And then at the end of that, it would culminate in a spring game between the two squads. Now, it didn't work out. The NCAA did end up shutting this down. And video here, the response from Fran Brown responding to the NCAA shutting down the idea of the video, courtesy of Ashley Wensk on Twitter. This is what the leader of Syracuse had to say following the NCAA ruling that would not permit them to have this proposed spring game.
We should have just told Coach Belichick and Bill O'Brien to come up with it, and then they would have let them do it, and then it would have all went right. We shouldn't have been the first two dudes to say, you know, damn well they wasn't about to let Coach Prime Time and Fran Brown be the first two guys to do it. It was over their dead bodies, so that wasn't happening that way. I'm just messing with you, NCAA. Don't get all mad and call my AD and try to find me. I'm literally joking. But I think that they were headed in the right direction, right? And they had all the right reasons. It wouldn't have gave everybody the same opportunity, right? It would have been a little advantage because, and it wasn't about us being able to practice, because us practicing together would have only limited the amount of people on the field. It would have been 11 on the field now instead of, well, we go 2 spots, so it's 44. So now instead of that, it would have been 11 going at a time, right? The financial literacy stuff that me and Coach Prime was talking about being able to do would have been something that these kids would have been take from them for a long time. And then we was going to have it set up where our study hall was going to be together. Guys was going to be in there doing work and things of that nature. So we were trying to build like a full family more so than just, hey, the spring game was going to do that. That would have been a cool event at the spring game, but it was more so about this spring ball thing. Everyone's trying to like fade away from it. They don't want everyone to see it. So we're trying to bring some light to it to say like, hey, this is a huge event, right? This would have been a huge fight like going on. You'd have been able to see us play them on April the 18th, the day before Easter in Colorado. Like, everything would have sold out, right? So now you could have been able to look forward to that. You could get.
So he continues for a little bit longer, but you get the gist of his sentiment there, and he starts off with a joke and backpedals a little bit with the NCAA. But when you hear more about what was maybe in the works here, you're talking about a Remember the Titans-esque scene here where you've got these guys together for 3 days, maybe partnering up with someone on the other team. Their study halls are together. They're doing financial literacy classes, these other things outside of football maybe to build this level or sense of camaraderie, and then to go and compete on the 18th as a culmination of that. So kind of an interesting deal from the D1 level. I think it sets the scene for our Division II conversation quite nicely. And next year is definitely in the question for D1. And I'm sure a lot of coaches will push this, especially once they've seen it really enacted at the Division II level, to see, why can't we do this? There's other teams in the NCAA doing that at a lower division. But D2 teams, they're ready to do it now. There's no waiting, no grace period for D2 squads. And we've got a couple big-time D2 programs that will be taking advantage of this ruling this spring. The first two that I'd like to talk about right here, we've got CSU Pueblo and West Texas A&M. This is from Coach Lynn here. He says, D2 football getting it done. Colorado State Pueblo and West Texas A&M is competing in a spring scrimmage this spring. Appreciate Doug Lipinski and Paul Pinsky for making this happen, the respective athletic directors there from the two institutions. So we know those two universities will face off. CSU Pueblo, the reigning 1 seed from Super Region 4, they have had a lot of success as of late, winning the RMAC last year, taking that next step over Colorado Mines. You look at a West Texas A&M team that is always competitive in the Lone Star Conference, and that makes for some really good spring football, is what I can certainly imagine. But to keep things moving, in the spirit of some cross-conference competition, we've got another one, this time between the MIAA and the GAC. How about Central Oklahoma and Southern Nazarene getting together in Edmond, Oklahoma? Right here is the official announcement from UCO. They announced their spring game against Southern Nazarene. It'll be Thursday, April 17th in Edmond. They've never played an official football game. These two schools, they did get together in March of 2021 for another spring exhibition following the canceled 2020 season. So some of those schools did go in the spring and try to get some type of competition together because they missed that fall season. That's happened here. But these schools have never actually played a real sanctioned regulation game against each other. And I think that makes for an interesting matchup, right? It gives a chance for, and we'll talk about later some of the reasons why these are beneficial. So I'll save it for that. We got a couple other ones to talk about. This one is a little bit interesting. You heard Deion and Fran respectively talk about the pro style, the NFL style of these quote-unquote joint practices. That's exactly how Upper Iowa and Winona State are branding their spring game, a.k.a. joint practice. That's April 12th. Winona State will take on Upper Iowa. Here's the release right here. They'll be hosting Winona State. Upper Iowa will at a joint practice on April 12th with the annual spring raffle draw to follow. So, again, getting more people to show up and take part in this is obviously a big piece of that. And the interesting part of this is that it's branded as a joint practice instead of a spring game. So you can imagine the structure of said day will probably be much different than a typical quote-unquote spring game. The last one that at least I could find, of course, because, well, I work at Northern, for those of you who don't know, but Northern Michigan playing host to Minnesota Duluth in the Superior Dome on April 12th as well. This will be, from what I can tell, maybe a more traditional spring game, but I guess we'll see how it's run. Minnesota Duluth, obviously coming off of some pretty successful seasons, have maybe disappointed when it comes to the later part of the season. The NSIC has been so competitive. Northern Michigan on the opposite end of that spectrum. These two teams did get together and have played in both 2023 and 2024 with the Bulldogs taking both those contests. But again, they're no longer on the schedule for either of these guys, so there's not any giveaways, so to speak. Should be a good benefit for both these teams, net benefit to get together and have some of these competitions. But what are the benefits of these spring scrimmages? I think one, the most obvious, is giving players a quote-unquote real game type look instead of practicing, continuing to go against the same guys that they know all the tendencies of. Right? If you're a defensive back and you're going against a wide receiver and you've studied his route tree and you know all of his movements and his tendencies and his little ticks and the way that he operates, it's going to be a lot easier for you to cover him. And that can be good from a wide receiver perspective. If the DB knows everything about you, you have to work that much harder to get open. But in this quote-unquote real game environment where the other guy doesn't have this abundance of film potentially to scout and to study you, you can go out there and get maybe more of a real look, try out some new and go back to maybe some old technique and try out some different moves and combinations, some different releases, some hand placement. Across the board, it's just good to play against someone in a different colored jersey. The other piece of that I think comes with the territory as well, common sense, is getting people to show up and support, right? Branding one of these games against a different opponent as opposed to saying, hey, we're going to inter-squad, we're going to do a green and gold game or a blue and white game, whatever it is. I think that's going to get people to hopefully just get through the door. And for a lot of spring games, that's something that they just lack. It's hard to get people excited about these spring games. Finally, though, I think it gives coaches a better look at designing against potentially a different scheme, right? When you go against, even if you're doing a scout team in practice and you've got your guys trying to emulate a different offense or defense and they're doing their best in the scout team, it's not going to be the same. And if you are one of the teams that still does ones-on-ones in practice, which most do, but it's kind of falling off here. If you're one of those teams that does ones-on-ones, one's defense and one offense against each other, you're always going to be going against that same look, especially from an offensive perspective, that same kind of defensive front with a little bit of wrinkles, same blitz packages, those kind of things. If you get a chance to go and mix that up, get a little variety, give your front five, that offensive line, give your skill position players, give your quarterback some different looks. That can be incredibly beneficial for especially a young team, but any team in general, just to get a little bit more of that experience. So excited to see what that looks like this spring.